By the end of A Feast for Crows, the Iron Throne has rebuilt its navy. Brand new warships, freshly commissioned, paid for with coin the Crown does not really have. And then the fleet vanishes, not destroyed in battle, not seized by an enemy. It sails away under its own commander. If you want to understand how that happens, you have to look at the moment Cersei Lannister chose Aurane Waters, and why she chose him. Hello everyone, and welcome to Storyteller's Codex. Here we delve deep into the rich lore of the Lord of the Rings, a song of ice and fire, and the vast worlds beyond. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. The naval crisis begins at the Blackwater. Stannis Baratheon's fleet is shattered by wildfire and chain boom, but the fighting devastates the bay. Ships burn, vessels sink. King's Landing does not emerge with a dominant navy. It emerges exhausted. In a clash of kings, the wildfire victory feels decisive, but strategically, the Crown's naval position is fragile afterward. The royal fleet had been heavily committed. Losses are substantial. By the time we reach A Feast for Crows, Cersei is acutely aware of this vulnerability. The Ironborn are raiding the western coast. The Stepstones remain unstable. Trade routes matter, especially when the Crown is financially strained. Control of the sea means control of supply and mobility. Cersei understands this part correctly. She needs ships. But here's the issue. The Crown is already deeply in debt. The treasury is weakened. War has damaged tax collection. Rebuilding a navy is expensive, and yet Cersei commits to it anyway. The decision to rebuild the fleet is rational in isolation. The execution is not. Aurane Waters enters the story as a relatively minor figure. He's a bastard of House Velaryon. The Velaryons are historically tied to the Targaryens. They are a seafaring house. That gives Aurane some plausible credentials, but what captures Cersei's attention is not his resume. It is his face. In A Feast for Crows, when she first notices him, her internal monologue lingers on his appearance. He's described as having silver gold hair and purple eyes, features that remind her strongly of Rhaegar Targaryen. The text explicitly tells us that Cersei finds him beautiful. More than that, she finds him evocative. This matters because Cersei's history with Rhaegar is personal and unresolved. She once imagined marrying him. She believed she was meant for him. Orin's resemblance triggers something emotional. Instead of evaluating him purely as a naval officer, she begins projecting qualities onto him. She thinks he is loyal. She interprets his deference as devotion. She elevates him rapidly. This is not subtle political calculation. This is aesthetic bias. When Cersei appoints Aurane as Master of Ships, she bypasses more experienced men. The small council had seen competent naval commanders before. Stannis himself once held the office effectively. Paxter Redwyne commands one of the most powerful fleets in Westeros, but Cersei distrusts major houses. She resents Tyrell influence. She does not want to empower men who might oppose her. Aurane is young. He is grateful. He flatters her. In her internal reasoning, she convinces herself that his Velaryon blood makes him suitable. But suitability is not the real criterion. Control is. This fits a pattern in her regency. She promotes Qyburn despite his disreputable background. She relies on flatterers and isolates herself from experienced dissenters. Aurane becomes Master of Ships not because he has demonstrated naval brilliance, but because he feels safe, and that is the problem. Once appointed, Aurane oversees the construction of a new royal fleet. Dozens of warships are commissioned, shipyards are busy, resources are diverted. This happens while the Crown is already struggling with debt to the Iron Bank and the Faith. Cersei does not frame the fleet as a financial strain. In her mind, it is an assertion of strength. But strength built on borrowed coin is precarious. The rebuilding of the fleet consumes gold the Crown cannot easily replace. It deepens financial exposure. And here's the key point. Cersei believes she is consolidating power. In reality, she is concentrating risk into one man's hands. Aurane commands the ships. Aurane controls their deployment, and Cersei never seriously questions whether that loyalty is personal or temporary. By the end of A Feast for Crows, the fleet is ready. Cersei believes she has solved her naval weakness. Aurane commands the ships. The royal fleet is no longer a vulnerability. Then she is arrested by the Faith. This is the critical overlap. While Cersei is imprisoned by the High Sparrow, events move beyond her control. In A Dance with Dragons, when the epilogue chapter shifts perspective, we learn what has happened in her absence. Aurane Waters has taken the fleet and sailed. The ships do not return to King's Landing. Reports reach court that a pirate lord is operating in the Stepstones with newly built warships. Some call him the Lord of the Waters. The implication is clear. Aurane has repurposed the Crown's navy for himself. No battle, no siege, no heroic defection. He simply leaves. And because the ships are new, because they were funded centrally, because Cersei concentrated authority in him, the Crown has no immediate counterbalance. The fleet was not captured, it was handed over. To understand how this blindsides her, you have to look at Cersei's internal logic throughout A Feast for Crows. She repeatedly interprets flattery as loyalty. When Qyburn reassures her, she believes him. When Aurane speaks deferentially, she reads devotion into it. There is a moment when she reflects that Aurane looks at her as if she were the sun. That image matters. She confuses admiration with allegiance. Compare this to how she misjudges the High Sparrow. She believes arming the faith will bind them to her through gratitude. Instead, they assert independence immediately. Or compare it to her treatment of the Tyrells. She assumes she can intimidate or outmaneuver them without consequence. Instead, she isolates herself politically. The pattern is consistent. Cersei assumes that because she feels powerful, others will behave as if she is unassailable. Aurane behaves respectfully. He performs loyalty. He accepts promotion. And she never seriously interrogates his incentives. Unlike Tywin, who built loyalty through fear and shared interest, Cersei builds it through perception. Aurane takes advantage of that. The loss of the fleet is not symbolic. It has material consequences. First, King's Landing loses maritime control. Trade routes become more vulnerable. The Crown cannot project naval power quickly. Second, piracy in the Stepstones increases instability in the Narrow Sea. The Stepstones are already a historically volatile region. Giving a newly empowered pirate a royal fleet strengthens that instability. Third, the geopolitical situation is shifting elsewhere. The Ironborn are active under Euron Greyjoy. The Reach is distracted. The Golden Company is preparing to land with Aegon Targaryen. A strong royal fleet would have been a strategic asset in that environment. Instead, the Crown is exposed. Think about earlier periods in the series. When Stannis holds Dragonstone and commands ships, he poses a credible threat. Naval mobility matters in Westerosi conflict. Cersei forfeits that leverage, and she does so at the exact moment external claimants are rising. Aurane's betrayal is not an isolated failure. It fits into a broader pattern in A Song of Ice and Fire where rulers empower individuals based on emotion rather than structural alignment. Robert Baratheon gives financial authority to Peter Baelish because he finds him amusing and competent enough. He does not monitor the debt system carefully. The Crown becomes dependent. Ned Stark trusts Baelish's assurances in King's Landing, believing shared history equals loyalty. That assumption proves fatal. Cersei mirrors both mistakes. She elevates Aurane because she likes what he represents. She does not test his long-term loyalty. She does not bind him with hostages or mutual dependence. Contrast this with how Tywin handled potential threats. Tywin integrated power through fear, debt, and calculated marriage alliances. Cersei integrates power through preference. Aurane's departure is the logical outcome of that governance style. Aurane Waters does not defeat Cersei in battle. He does not confront her. He simply accepts the ships she builds and leaves. That is the most revealing part of the episode. The fleet was meant to restore royal authority after the Blackwater. It was meant to demonstrate strength. Instead, it exposes fragility. Cersei's regency consistently replaces experienced counsel with personal validation. She confuses admiration with loyalty. She invests heavily in symbols of power without securing foundations. When Aurane sails away, the Crown does not just lose ships, it loses credibility. And in a world where perception shapes allegiance, that loss is more damaging than any single naval defeat. If you are interested in The Lord of the Rings or A Song of Ice and Fire, click one of the links on the screen to dive deeper into the lore. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time.